Yep, stack.
Triple threat.
Expected value. Now take what you learn, go out there, and get stacked.
What up, team? Gripst, Evan here for Gripst.com, continuing with my review of Al's victory in the 200K guaranteed GSPO on Bovada for $36,000. We've come a long way, and we've made it to the final table and just seen the elimination of the 8th place finisher. Just to bring you guys up to speed, I'm going to tell you what the payouts are for this final table so that you can see how that affects our strategy. 9th place is $2,241. 8th is $37.35. 7th is $56.56. 6th is $77.90. 5th is when we hit the 5-figure mark at $10,245. 4th is $14,109. 3rd, $19,573. 2nd, $26,254, and first place money is $35,764.32. Let's get it, y'all. So at this point, we have a pretty dominant lead on the final table. It's definitely worth looking at the stacks. We have 80 bigs. Player to our left, one of the other big stacks, has 40 bigs. To his left is a very short stack with 10 bigs, and this guy will be an important player to pay attention to. 18 bigs up here, another big stack, 40 bigs, 3 to our right, and then we have another micro stack at 13 bigs and another medium stack at 30. So we're going to be looking to apply pressure to the medium-sized stacks. That's pretty much 2nd, 3rd, and 4th place, and not doing too much with the small stacks. Al's strategy was to keep the small stacks alive so that he would have extra fold equity against the bigger stacks. This is because you've heard about the payouts. Well, you know, it's a few $1,000s every time someone gets eliminated. So when there's a super short stack in the mix, the other big stacks aren't going to want to get busted by us. And we see one of the short stacks win in a huge flip, and that creates even more micro stacks. We have 2 guys who, with the blinds going up, have 6 big blinds, and this is just fantastic for us. We can just hammer away and steal. Shorty shoves it for 5 bigs with the 3s, gets called by the 6s. Hit the showers, buddy. You're out of here, and we're down to 6-handed. Some information about player 2020-80818 is that he'd been very chatty during the tournament and was very cordial with our hero. He was also talking about how he hated the fact that hero was on his left, so that means we got the fear equity. That means that he doesn't want to play with us, and when we know someone doesn't want to play with us, well, we're going to do everything we can to try to play with them and keep them out of their comfort zone. Another all-in and a call. 6th place has been eliminated. We are now guaranteed that 5-figure payday of $10,000. No raise here on the button, as we would have had to call a reshove from the big blind, and Al is not trying to double that short stack up. And we see that player 2020 doesn't know a whole lot about sizing, opening for 5x and shit. Just not what you want to be doing. So we could definitely mark him as one of the weaker players, and that's why Al goes for the maximum pressure here. Is shoving in 30 blinds with Jack 7 optimal? Is it standard? I don't think so. But when we're looking at a $4,000 pay jump, that's going to happen very soon because this guy has 5 bigs, it's extremely hard for the small blind to call. And by going for the full shove, we don't give him room to make a play on us. And hey, even if he does wake up with a hand, we're still going to crack him like 20 to 30% of the time and have an even more dominant chip lead. So there is the upside of getting there. And if he calls and we lose, we're still, pretty much tied for first. And we'll see Al just taking all the blinds, except for that of the short stack in the big blind, because he wants to keep him around. Raise and take. This is probably going to be a recurring theme. Here, it's a pretty easy call given the price, but because of Al's plan, keeping this guy around is the one reason that we see a fold there with Queen 8, so don't freak out. And we have a 40 big blind reshove from a player who we have covered. That's pretty risky play by him. Pot odds, good, but value to keeping this guy alive, better. And we'll just take what we can. And here's a nice spot to defend. We get a great price, have a great flopping hand, and that's what we're talking about. That's the kind of flop you're hoping for when you peel with the 9-10 of diamonds. At this point, we have a couple of options. But since this is a board that our opponent's going to c-bet quite a bit, even with a lot of missed hands, I think check raising is a good play and continuing to apply the pressure. Now, let's look at Al's notes because he's unsure what the best play was. I think with more showdown value, I'm more on board with check calling, but because, you know, we have the 10 high and we just don't want to like let him see any cards with overcards, I think that check raising would be better. Once it goes check check on the turn, we can definitely fire a buckshot out on the river and hope to get the fold. We get called by ace-6, and I think his call is totally fine with ace-6, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. But I think if we had started applying the pressure on that flop with a check raise and followed through with a turn barrel, I think there's a pretty good chance we could have moved this guy off his hand, especially because of the, you know, big stack versus big stack dynamic with other short stacks there. He's not going to want to play a massive pot. When we go check call, check check, fire the river, you know, we're not putting him in that tough of a spot. We're playing a pretty small pot. Whereas if we went check, raise, bomb, and bomb, now we're forcing him into a very uncomfortable spot, which will maximize our fold equity. So here we're getting a great price with a great hand, and at this point Al said, you know what, I'm done waiting. I'm taking this guy out. I know I got him dominated. Smash. And that brings us up to $14,000 four-handed play. And I think we got to run it here too. This guy's moving it for about 23 big blinds. He's going to have all the pairs. He's going to have some good aces. He may have some bad aces as well. He's probably going to have stuff like king, queen. Could be doing this with any Broadway. It is Bovada. You never know what they're going to show up with. So we got to run it with the ace, queen. And he also had ace, queen. Chop it up. We're still applying the pressure. The next page up's 5,000, which is pretty significant, so that's plenty of reason for us to continue applying pressure. And that's what I was doing here with the big shove over the top. I think calling is all right, but Al makes a good point that he is disguising his hand by doing this shove. He's making it look like a jack 10, 7, 6, and since he only called pre-flop, he doesn't have a strong hand very often, and he's hoping that maybe the villain will hero call with hands like ace high. So Al goes for the under rep and does get called by the ace high. Well read, well played, well deserved. Back in the lead, and now we're looking at guaranteed 19.5. Next page up is 7K, and then heads up for all the chat. So again, we still have a short stack in the mix, so we can try to apply pressure to the other big stack. The one thing is that player has position on us, and therefore we don't want to go too out of line. Definitely got to continue with mid pair. Once we're facing the second barrel, it does get a little bit tougher. This guy can definitely be barreling with a lot of draws, but those draws do have equity against us. And to call the turn and then face another big bet on the river is just not going to be a comfortable spot. So I like that Al didn't get too carried away there. Go for the cheap steal. Didn't work. Hard for either player to have an ace in limped pots, but our villain had a good enough hand to go with. I think it's a bit aggressive, and in the notes he said, you know, I didn't adjust properly until we were deep into three-handed. Not surprised to see myself going after the guy who didn't want to fold. And Al's big goal at this point was to get to heads up. Fortunately for him, he's played a lot of heads up sit and goes and watched a lot of content on that variant of poker. Nice bet size. Max value. Make sure you get paid when you make the goods. So his goal was to get to heads up. He said if he could get to heads up against either of these players with even chip stacks, he felt his edge was going to be monstrous, ginormous. So all he wanted to do was get there, and I think he's doing a good job of giving himself a chance to get there with a little bit more than even stacks. And I like it, raising and taking on the buttons. Definitely want to defend the Jack 10 suited. Here's a spot where with a couple of backdoors and overs, we could go for a check raise bluff. We could also go for a float, but with our high card being Jack, I think I like the check raise more so than a check call. And the more showdown value we have, the more we can lean towards check calling. So a lot of good moves and plays being seen here. No need to get involved. Small blind is going to be priced in. We will get to see what he was 3-betting us with. Ooh, a little bit of gabbage. The Jack 8 off. And this evens out stacks a little bit for them, which is nice because we can apply more pressure to them. Don't think I really like this river bet. It's, when you're only putting in one bet on the river and your opponent can just be like, oh, I get a call and see his cards and then the hand's over. It's a lot easier for them to make the call than when you're applying pressure the whole way through. And this one's interesting. We've seen this opponent likes to mix it up, so we can't really bet fold second pair on the flop. And once we turn this flush draw, I think we certainly have to call to try to improve or decide if we want to make a hero call. Now on the river, pretty tough spot. In the notes, he says he was super close to making this call on the river, but couldn't bring himself to do it. You just got to be putting your opponent on a big, heroic, crazy bluff for this to be a good call. I mean, we need to be right about 30% of the time, which isn't that high. I can definitely see him check raising with like overcards and stuff. And I don't know how many tens he's defending from the small blind or how many strong diamond hands he's defending. But like just a really tough spot to make that call. If you make it and you're right, the tournament's over. But even if you fold, you're still comfortably in second place. So because of your chip position, I think I'm pretty okay with the way the hand was played. And we're seeing a lot of limping from the small blind, which is a fine strategy to use when dealing with an aggressive, tough player out of position who's going to be forcing you to play a lot of pots. It's just a form of pot control. And I think it's a good adjustment by our hero. Ace King, obviously ready to go. Although it's just 20 big blinds, so the standard play is to shove. I think because of the aggressive image we have, we could opt for a smaller 3-bet size just to give our opponent a little bit of room to come over the top with something like Ace 2. Either way, so far looking pretty good. Oh wow! And here I was thinking the river was bad for us. Well, it didn't really matter. But wow, that's quite the cooler three-handed. And when these things happen, that's when you got to tell yourself, you know what? The stars are aligned. This one's mine. Here, I'd much rather prefer to see a 3-bets and get it in. Although sevens is a hand that is strong for sure. It's not a hand that flops all that well. And I think I'd rather just try to play for all the chips pre-flop here rather than play the guessing game out of position. Now, this was pretty sweet. We binked middle sizzle on the turn. And with Antonio's favorite, the Nutter Butters, we're ready to play. So the question is, do we think our opponent's ever bluffing here with this check back raise turn line? So if we don't think he is, we might as well just shove it in. If we think he's trying to get a cheap showdown, we definitely need to get more chips in on the turn. And I think if he's bluffing, he's probably not going to follow through on the river. He's just kind of trying to price himself into seeing the river for a cheap price. We can check back. So I like putting in more money on the turn, which Al does, gets called. Villain is in great shape, and we get knocked down to third place. So Bovada tried to give it to player 533 to, let's just call him player row and we'll call him player UK. Because that's easier than doing the numbers. They tried to give him with the aces, didn't work out, and they said, oh, we're sorry, buddy. Here, how about a set over set instead? A nice hand here with the kings. I think we could bet a little bit smaller on the river to try to get called by ace high, maybe like 150. Fine, and we're all pretty even stacked at this point, so we know that UK is pretty aggressive, definitely applying the pressure, definitely getting out of line, and player row, oh, you know what? This is probably their country. This guy's probably from the UK, which goes with the style, and this guy's probably from Romania. which goes with the style. That is very interesting. I'll look forward to reviewing the other parts and seeing if indeed the numbers that, or the letters that go beside the names are consistent with all the various country codes, because that'd be cool. So peeling and 3-betting are both fine options here. I prefer the peel a little bit more because we have a great hand that can dominate a lot of our opponent's range, and we're happy to play it in position. This point on the turn, it looked like our hand was probably good, so I like the bet. And the river is pretty gross. Because the question is, you know, how often is this guy taking this line as a bluff? You know, and is he capable of turning hands into a bluff? I think usually it's not. I think usually it's what it looks like and they just have it. Even if he was going to, you know, no, there's no other draw. There's only flush draws. And given the way this guy's been playing, I don't think we're going to see a bluff here. So I think that making the fold is very disciplined and very good. We are getting a decent price, but I just don't expect this guy to play a worse hand in this fashion. And in the notes, it says this player hasn't shown a single bluff yet. Seems odd that he would turn a hand like 9x or ace-x into a bluff. Totally agree with you there, bro. Good discipline. It's important to not get frustrated. You're like, oh man, like the river came that, and I can't believe they ruined my hand. I'm going to call to show that I had the best hand on the turn so I can be mad at Bovada for dealing with that river. That's not good poker. You know, roll with the punches, whatever comes, go with it. How many blinds we got here? 30? It's a tad bit high to be shoving, but I get it. You don't want to give UK a chance to 4-bet you and have to run the cards against some bunk hand, and you also don't want to get flatted, so okay. Yeah. Although it seems higher variance because we're putting all our chips in the middle, it's actually a lower variance way of playing than 3-betting small, where you're opening the door to your opponent's forcing you to play for all your chips. All right, see a flop mid-pair, try to get it to showdown, and when no one shows any interest, we just bet and take it on the turn. Cool. Raise and take with the queen 9. Oh, we got them kings. We got them kings. We can go either way with this. We could 3-bet small, or we could flat. Al opts to flat to keep most of villain's range in. I think it's cool. Not the ideal flop for us, but definitely not one we're just going to instantly release on. It's a board he's going to be c-betting with everything and probably shutting down for the most part once we check call. We can call again on the turn, but I don't think we can really call on the river. It's a tough spot. Personally, I'm not sure what I would do in the moment, whether I would call again, one on the turn and give up on the river, or just give up on the turn, because this guy follows through. We don't see him trying to show down too much. He much more likes to play the pressure game than the showdown game. So I think maybe considering folding the turn may be a good option. All right, 20 blinds deep. We can chip up 20%. I'm down with the shove here. Got it through. And we'll be ducking out of this one. You know what? Let's see this sweat for fun. Show known hole cards, please. We got reshoved by the king queen, totally standard. He ran into the ace king, unlucky. And suddenly, Mr. Romania has gone from cellar dweller to top baller. Outhouse to penthouse would be the appropriate one. I was trying to do my own, and I just wasn't in the zone enough today to pull it off. So we'll keep the hero cards. And that changes a lot. And I think Al's probably although he probably wanted, you know, the 10 grand of the pay jump, he's probably pretty happy to see the chips go to player row, because that guy's been playing a lot weaker and would be a much easier match heads up than UK would be. So here we get a nice turn, get the max value, bam, bam, see that Mr. UK is very stubborn, and we will know that we shouldn't be trying to bluff him too much. Try to limp in with the 10-9, totally cool, and get jammed on. No dice. King 9 for the win. 30 blind reshove. Another, a lot of big shoves going on here. Although three-handed, you know, sometimes that's just your play with certain cards you get dealt. Deuce tray, no thanks. And row, really running up that stack. Probably feeling pretty good right now. Shit, we stepped in it, guys. Maximum sweat. It's a flip. Oh no. Oh yeah! Wow. I wish I could have seen the video of Al's reaction to that run out in the moment while it happened. That would have been hilarious. Nice hand, buddy. Congrats on winning that flip. And we're back in comfortable position. And this setup, although before we had all the chips, and it was great, this is kind of the ideal setup. The weaker player of our two opponents has a good amount of chips. We're the chip leader by a little bit. And the tough opponent has less chips. And, well, looks like he's in trouble. King 4 off. 19 bigs. Oh, seems like a bit much. You getting in there? And he is out, and we are now heads up for all the gravy. So we are guaranteed $26,000 versus $35,700. So we're effectively playing a $10,000 heads up sit and go. We'll get a few hands in here, and then we'll run out the last part of the heads up match in part 6. So definitely going to want to see Al opening the majority of buttons against this player and probably not defending too wide. And good spot for us to see bet bottom pair, get check raised. What are you going to do? Flop the open ender. Al opts to semi-bluff with it. I like it. So far, Mr. Rowe has opened every button, so we can assume that he's playing a pretty wide range. And he's actually appearing to be a lot more active than he was otherwise. Little surprised by the defend with the 4-3 off. And this is a pretty interesting turn spot. Let's see what the notes say, because at this point, I mean, I don't got much to add. Lol, just fold pre and don't spew post. I don't know what I was thinking. He has more 10s in his range than I do. Don't know why I'm just going crazy here. Neither do I, but I like that in your review you realize that this was just a bad play. And you get out of there. And that's the power of reviewing your own hand histories, guys. You don't necessarily need me to go through it to find mistakes and things you can change. If you just go through and really look at it and be like, oh, that was cool, and oh, that wasn't. You can find a lot of things you can change and improve your game a lot just by spending, you know, the extra hour or two just going through, analyzing, critiquing your own play. So we call here pre-flop because we have a decent price, and since he has been playing pretty aggressively heads up, we can assume he has a wide range. Once we get middle pair, we can't fold. So the question is, do we want to call, or do we just want to jam it? It's honestly not a bad spot to semi-bluff jam. We have 2 times the pot, and we got a 5-outer if called, and there just isn't much that can call us. You can only call us with King X, which is a very small portion of his range. So Al makes a play that I quite like, and we get it through. Once we call, he's going to know that we have a Jack or King, and probably not going to try to barrel us too much. So rather than give him the free card there, I'm totally on board with that shove. And, you know, we may get hero called by something crazy like we did earlier when we had the 2-pair on that 9-8-8 board or whatever. He may think we have Queen 10 doing it with the draw and calls like Ace Queen or Ace 10. So there's a few good things going for us in that spot. Finally, we get one through where he checked back and we fire the turn. Nice board for us there. Bet take. I'm on board with both plays here. 3-betting the ace-jack suited or flatting. And we're starting to pick up a little bit of momentum. And you can see that Al's just getting his swag on a little bit there. And, oh man, what do we have coming here? Well, the first word in the comments is lol. So, let's just read Al's analysis of this one. Well, I just assumed he was getting annoyed or slightly tilted by my aggression, so he decided to 3-bet. So I called looking to abuse him post-flop, which was a bad call. On the flop, I'm floating for the same reasons I said for my pre-flop call. Once he checks on the turn, I think he has a lot of different hands that can fold to a turn bet. So my hand choice for doing this is dumb, but the actual idea, I like it. So we bet with the open-ender with some equity, and that's not the best river. J on the river was kind of a shitty river card to bluff, but I thought a pot-sized bet would get him to fold ace, queen, ace, king hands, which may have called the turn because they have the gutter, and call with his queens better if he was checking the turn. So I thought his range was weighted more towards ace-high type hands. I thought it was a good bluff spot. I would have preferred a bet of 1.27 mil instead of my whole stack, since I'm targeting those exact hands. I don't expect them to call 1.275 bet either, so I could save 800K for those times I am called. And this was not one of those times. Al gets his opponent to fold with a very well thought out, calculated bluff, and suddenly we have grasped the chip lead. And the one thing is, like, I wouldn't really expect him to fold those overpairs, but if there were a river where he was going to fold an overpair, the flush completing board pairing jack may be the one. Obviously, he's not going to fold a jack or flush, but we're not trying to get him to fold those hands, and I don't really reckon he would have played those hands in that fashion anyway. But we'll leave you guys with that one. That's a good one to think about, and you can see that when we come back, we have another 100 hands of heads-up fun to review. So that is going to conclude part 5 of this series. I hope you learned a thing or two that you can add to your game to help you get stacking. Please keep firing away with the questions, comments, insights, observations, and anything else, any words you can think of that would be good for me to add to part 6 to say in that little slew right there. This has been Evan for Gripst.com. Always a pleasure. Now you know what to do. Take what you learned, go out there, and get stacking.
Yeah, we get it stacking. Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking. The flops I be smashing, the pots I be blasting. Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking. When the main event, man, that could never happen. The Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking. Now you're picking up traction, getting action. Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking.
Stack it up, cash it in, damn I win again. Many friends come to play, cause I'm on the internet. Better yet, I flop the turn and take a chance upon the river. I'll bluff you with the 7-2 offsuit, whatever's clever. Call you all in while your chip stacks falling. Better believe the dealer, cause the game just started. Don't know the rules, you bet it all and then you risk it. If you wanna learn it, you should go online and hit up Gripst.
Yeah, we get it stacking. Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking. The flops I be smashing, the pots I be blasting. Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking. When the main event, man, that could never happen. The Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking. Now you're picking up traction, getting action. Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking. Ever since a young cat, want a pocket stack with cash in the fast stack, crammed in the clam clip. Gotta get the action, gotta get it stacking. Dollars on the noggin, want a lot of transactions. Started as a little retarded, now with the knowledge, playing cards, flopping, bombarded, cause it was harder than I thought. Then I got on Gripst.com, asking and got what I needed to be to me get it stacking. Yeah, we get it stacking. Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking. The flops I be smashing, the pots I be blasting. Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking. When the main event, man, that could never happen. The Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking. Now you're picking up traction, getting action. Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking. Yeah, we get it stacking. Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking. The flops I be smashing, the pots I be blasting. Gripst.com taught you how to get it stacking. When the main event, man, that could never happen. The Gripst.com Grips.com taught you how to get it stacking. Yeah, we get it stacking. Grips.com taught you how to get it stacking. The flops I be smashing, and pots I be blasting. Grips.com